So, who do you want me to gradient mesh portrait today? You have an actor? Who did we do? Phil Collins? Phil? P. I ain't doing no Little Wayne. I'm doing Phil Collins. Somebody's already said it first.
Wait, do some with the bear. Yeah, George Clooney.
How about Lil Wayne?
Phil Collins. That's not him.
Who's that?
Okay. Is that his daughter?
Okay, so no Phil Collins. Who do you want?
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney.
Mark Hamill? There you go, Mark Hamill.
Who?
Oh, Robert Downey Jr.
Luke Skywalker? But the old one, do the old one.
Robert Downey Jr.
Or Michael J. Fox?
Here's way too much. Oh, there we go. The old one.
Yeah.
There we go. Before he was ravaged by drugs. There we go.
Oh, stop.
Okay, that's a good one, but I need a higher resolution. There we go. So remember, resolution is good. So I'm going to copy that, and let's go into our Illustrator, and let's make a new one. Remember, try and make something a little bit bigger. I'm going to use, again, print, and I'm going to use tabloid. Remember, we're going to be putting them out there on the big white board out there, so use something a little bigger. Tabloid is good. I'm going to go portrait this way, and I'm going to paste my Mark Hamill in there. Hamill? Hamill? There we go. Okay, so again today we'll be doing a little bit differently than we did last class. We'll do a gradient mesh. A couple things you might want to do is duplicate the picture. So I'm going to duplicate the picture, and I'm going to shrink it down. There we go. There we go. So again, I'm going to duplicate the picture so I can suck up the colors with the eyedropper as I'm going through here. Again, we can exaggerate a little bit, adding a little color to him. So the first thing I'm going to do is lock this layer so that I don't mess with it. Now you can still use the eyedropper to suck up colors even if the layer is locked. So if I lock this layer together, I can still use the eyedropper to select the colors even if it's locked. I'm going to come over here and go to the layers window, and I'm going to lock it. Right there is a little lock next to the eyeball in the layers window. Then I can add a new layer right there, and I'm going to start with my main mesh. Main mesh. Okay, what is the main mesh? Well, I'm going to make one big gradient mesh for his flesh tone kind of colors, right? This whole kind of all the way around, all the way around, all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. I'm going to make one big graphic, apply some colors, and then slowly add gradient mesh to it to add the tones. And so instead of like last class where we were doing solid colors to give you different color tones, we're going to use the mesh. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and then of course we're going to use our favorite tool, the pen tool, and then I'm going to kind of just start going around. Remember, try and use the least amount of points you can. Remember, when you use the mesh, it adds more points. So if you remember from the days when we were making the fruit, this is almost like the apple day that we did the apple, and then of course I'm going to turn this off. There we go, so I can work. Okay, so we have our famous hero here, archetype hero here. And so, again, I'm going to use the eyedropper. So I'm going to use the eyedropper. I'm going to select the entire object, use the eyedropper to suck up a color, and I have one color. Okay, and then, of course, you'll notice you can't really see what's behind there, so it makes it very hard to apply the mesh to it, because you can't really see where things are at. So one way I've gone about, if I'm going to use the gradient mesh, is to actually apply a transparency to the actual color, then start applying the mesh. So I'd show you what I mean. Right now, this is really hard for me to apply a gradient mesh because I don't know where maybe the eye socket is, you know, and I might want to have it brighter here, a little bit darker down around there, and of course it's kind of dark along the edge over here. So of course you can have a dark edge over here, so I'm going to probably want to have a mesh that goes along the edge over here, and so on. So one way you can go about doing that is by using the in the layers window, or layers window, in the where is it? Action. Hold on. In my appearance window, I see it. It's already open somewhere. Appearance. Here it is. In the appearance window, you can give your color a opacity. And then you can see through, right? Give it a little bit of opacity. Then I can actually start applying my mesh. So I gave it a little bit of opacity. That way, when I start applying my mesh, you can see, hey, that was a good spot to apply. And then I can use my eyedropper to suck up a color. Then I can use my mesh again. Remember, when you're using the gradient mesh, you can click along the point. So I want to click along the point here. Remember, when you're moving the gradient mesh, you move it with the white selection tool here. So I'm going to make this dark as well. So take your time. Only apply a mesh, one mesh at a time. Don't try and do too much at one point. Again, I'm going to move some things around, make some things a little softer. Again, you can use the eyedropper. This is a little bit bright. Let me get a middle tone. There we go. Let me move this a little closer. I'm struggling to be able to get the two things to be next to each other at the same time. Move this over a little bit. There we go. Again, you can move objects around. Okay, I'm going to add one that goes along the other side as well. Yeah, I was trying to do that. Yeah, under appearance. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges is getting the eye sockets. So you can do that as well with the gradient mesh. So again, getting eye sockets as well. I'll change this to a darker one. He doesn't really have a lot of contrast, I think, is the biggest challenge here. This is too bright. Okay, so probably the biggest challenge is getting the eye sockets to be just right. One way to do the eye socket is to adjust the actual points. You see how I am adjusting the points here? Boy, that looks horrible. He looks like an alien. It's a kind of a difficult one to do. It really is. It's a difficult one. Let me see what one I did last year. That one worked really well. Hold on. I did a good one last year. Oh, here we go. I did
Couple fun classes maybe in the spring.
I did this guy. What is his name?
You can has defined it as a here.
What was his name? The musician. I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember his name, but this one was a little easier. As you can see, it's kind of solider. So let me try and get it better. Again, the biggest challenge is the eye sockets, which I didn't do very well here. Need to get some contrast in there. Maybe let me put one in the middle here. And there we go. That's a little better. So again, I have some nice contrast here. Let me put one here. There we go. So that's not too bad. I mean, it looks like nothing, but basically we haven't put any of the pieces in there, right? So you don't have any pieces. So as you keep going here, and this is probably a little bit dark down here, we'll probably have to make this a little brighter here. There we go. Kind of nice and subtle. You'll notice if your lines get too close together, you get this kind of put a little highlight right here on his other cheek. Then let's get, I would say down here a little bit, probably wherever his mouth is, kind of in here. So again, if you select the entire thing with the black one, the direct selection tool, you can go to the opacity and change it down so you can see the pieces underneath it. There we go. So let's get a little dark one right here. This one right here. Oh, that's definitely no good. Use the eyedropper. Again, use the eyedropper is the best way to go about getting the right color. And then to add contrast, really exaggerate your lines kind of close like that. There we go. And then so some of these I would probably do a little bit darker. So it just takes a lot of time, as you can see. Okay, let's add some pieces. Okay, I don't know. We'll see. So if I was going to add, let's say, a nose to the part of this gradient mesh, again, I'm going to turn the opacity down. And so let's say we need to add a nose to this right here. To do that, I would try and use separate objects. So I would try and use separate objects. So to add more shape to this drawing, let me get down here to the corner here. So I'm going to go and add a piece down here for his nose. So just like I did before, you know, you can add solid shapes. He has a kind of a bridge here. So kind of like we did the last time, maybe give it one of these. Okay, so adding shapes like this, and let me move this one backwards there. So again, I'm going to use the eyedropper to suck up some color. Okay, so okay, so now I have some face features that look like they're glued on there, right? I cut them out with a piece of scissors and I glued them down there, right? So, of course, just like we did with our clouds, the best way to get things to blend together is to blur them. So, in this case, if I click on this, I can go to my effects, blur, Gaussian blur, and really blur it up there. So again, it's a little crooked, maybe got hit by Darth Vader in the face, but if you're putting objects using the gradient mesh example, you can start building objects up over top and getting them to blend with your mesh that's there. So the mesh is just like a starting point, right? You can see, it's a nice starting point. We got that, so I start adding things. The downfall of this technique is that when it prints out, it kind of gets muddier. Because the printer doesn't do well with gradient kind of stuff. It likes the things to be kind of solider. That's a word? Solider? But again, all I did to start adding the facial features is draw some objects, start blurring it. Okay, let's do eye. So we have an eye socket there, it needs an eye. So if I'm going to put an eye over top of that, I probably would not blur it too much and leave it a little bit looking like it is glued on there, just so that it kind of differentiates between that and the background. Because if you look at the eye here, his eye is very contrasty, right? You got the white in there, so let's do this eye and do it and make it look good. Okay, we'll try. So again, blurring these features here. So actually, I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to go back to my layers window, and I'm going to duplicate this. And so let's look at the eye for a moment. Again, the eye is a little bit difficult in that there's so many different colors going on in an eye. He's got so many different colors. How I might approach this with the gradient mesh technique, again, maybe making solid colors, or if you remember, you can use your brush to do eyebrows. Do you remember that? Oh, we got to use the which one? I don't want that selected. Remember, you can use your brush. The brush works very well. You can actually go down. So you can use solid colors. Again, I might make a solid color for this to give it a starting color. And give that a solid color. Then maybe turn it off. It's still there. Turn it off. Then maybe put some highlights in there as well. Again, using the eyedropper. It's not, give me a break. I can't, that's not very highlighty. Again, if I was gonna do, you can use your brush stroke. And make that I can't go outside. Bummer. Whatever. And then use some solid colors for the eye as well. Possibly use the gradient mesh for this as well. So you can use gradient mesh in things like eyes as well. Then maybe use the gradient mesh for this as well. Don't forget the blur. In addition, you can add opacity. So, just like we had opacity, to make it blend as well. Woo! Don't like the brush strokes.
That is really freaky. That's bad. It's not so much worse.
That's true.
Yeah, you see like the dark side or something like that. That's actually perfect. You should say that. Rough one.
I don't know why this blur isn't working for me. It's not too bad in colors, Dean, but again, it's blurring. Little gradient mesh in there. Not too bad.
That's not too bad. It's a decent eyeball.
The gradient mesh is hard. You don't have to do gradient. You can do. Weren't you here when we did the last class? Who wasn't here last class? You guys missed the other demo? I put it online. I didn't put it online? What I did last class? Did I do something last class?
Yeah.
Or did I get? Did I count?
You did one style.
I did George Clooney?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see what I did.